Alabama fans are basically living out the plot of Groundhog Day, but instead of waking up like Phil Connors on the same morning, they're waking up to the same news. Another high-profile player is entering the transfer portal. Start off with Isaiah Bond, then carried over to Amari Nick Black, then carried over to Caleb Downs, and now Kaydn Proctor has made it known that he was only a one-year rental in Tuscaloosa because he's entering the transfer portal. Why is Proctor leaving Titletown? Where could he end up landing? And also, where does Kalen DeBoer turn from here? Let's go ahead and talk about it. But if you are new, welcome on into the channel, people. My name is Cole Thompson. I'm a radio show host based in Houston, and I talk college football daily. Simply because the clock has struck 0 on 2023 does not mean we are going to stop making content. We got live shows starting this week. We got a banner. We'll be looking back at 2023 at some of my worst predictions, best predictions, a look ahead at 2024. So if this is the fix you need to survive the college football offseason, why don't you go ahead and smash that subscribe button down below. Go ahead and comment and tell me, where do you think Kaydn Proctor lands in the transfer portal? Tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, best of bros, Alabama and college football aficionados everywhere about this channel, because we are on the race to become the #1 YouTube show talking college football daily. Go ahead and follow me on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson. That way, conversations surrounding our favorite sport never have to stop flowing. The way that I view what's going on in Tuscaloosa right now is like one of those satisfying videos where you see a small brick collide with a bigger brick, collide with a bigger brick, and it ultimately leads to this giant slab collapsing like a domino. But instead, it was the big domino falling first and just crushing everyone else in the process. Nick Saban retires after 17 illustrious seasons, and now the transfer portal is running rampant with players who were committed to Nick, not to Kalen DeBoer. And at this point, it's very hard-fetch to blame anyone entering the portal. When you commit to a program, one of the things that you hear a lot when the player puts on the hat and they say, I am here for the long haul, it's not just about the ambiance of what is Tuscaloosa or Tallahassee or Los Angeles or Ann Arbor or Columbus. It's the people you meet in the process. The big difference sometimes of landing a 5-star offensive tackle is your relationship. How does the offensive line coach work with him? How does the defensive coordinator recruit him? How is your baseline when it comes to working with as a head coach? Do you have something promising there? And Caleb Downs made it abundantly clear. He wanted to play for T-Rob. He wanted to play for Nick Saban. And there's nothing against Kalen DeBoer, but that's who I committed to. Those were the people that I hitched my wagon to, not to you. And so I got to do what's best for me. Anybody remember Kaydn Proctor's recruiting assessment? Like going into early signing period, signing day, everyone was focusing in on Iowa. He was committed to the Hawkeyes. He was going to be that #1 player and the next great eventual Iowa standout that made it to the NFL. And then at the very last second, Nick Saban flipped him to come down to Tuscaloosa. And that was a very big deal at the time. That's a reason why you can understand why Kaydn Proctor is leaving. Yes, he loves Tuscaloosa. I'm sure he was a very big fan of playing in the crimson and white. I'm sure he loves seeing that script A on his helmet and the number 74, or the script A on his uniform and the number 74 on his helmet. I'm sure he loved all of that. But he was committed to Nick Saban and Saban's staff and what Saban was implementing. So now he's got to do what's best for him. It's very hard-pressed to understand what you're losing, but at the same time, it's very easy to understand why this decision was made. Make no mistake, Caleb Downs is going to be the #1 player in the portal because there is no one built like him. But when it comes to the ascension of what NIL is, and especially what you're looking for, Kaydn Proctor is going to draw in a ton of interest, and he may end up being the more influential player for a roster simply because you don't find many 5-star offensive tackles enter the portal after one season in a very strong season. A lot of hiccups at the very beginning, but he found his pattern at the end, and then there was the struggles in the Rose Bowl, but that's a true freshman we're talking about. A 6'7", 345-pound true freshman that still is honing his craft. This is a guy that you can hitch your wagon to for 2 or 3 seasons and watch him become an All-American overnight. That's the way. If you know how to build a roster and you know how to finalize and finite a player, they can come in and be an immediate plug-and-play difference maker. And so Proctor is going to garner so much interest when it comes to NIL and when it comes to what his versatility can be and what his assets provide for an organization. Who can land him? Let's start off with the obvious one, Iowa. He was committed to Iowa all the way through early signing period before flipping at the last second. He was from the state of Iowa. He has a relationship with Kirk Ferentz. And according to everyone that I've spoken to during that process, it was very positive and very understanding why he eventually chose to go to Tuscaloosa over a place like the Hawkeyes. But now he's available. And now Iowa, we know what they are. They build tight ends, they have stable defenses, and they are fundamentally sound on the offensive line. It would make sense for Kirk Ferentz to make a phone call and say, it's time for you to return home and get to work. Glad you had fun down in T-Town. Now it's time to come back here and strut your stuff at Kinnick Stadium on Saturdays. Another school I wouldn't be shocked to see, Ohio State. They are gunning like crazy to go ahead and be the team to beat, not just in the Big Ten, but college football in general. With how much talent they have retained, they feel like that they're about ready to go on an epic run through the Big Ten and dismantle everybody in the process while winning a conference title. You want to go ahead and fortify your roster a little bit more, you add in a player like Proctor. Imagine getting him at your left tackle spot, thus fortifying your offensive line for Will Howard, for Travion Henderson, and for Quinshawn Junkins in the backfield. Not to mention Dallin Hayden that we have not even mentioned on this conversation. I think that Ohio State's going to be a player. I think Florida State's going to be a player. And the reason I say Florida State is because there's a proof of concept there. They'll tell you when you go into meetings, son, you commit to this program, you utilize the tools that we are benefiting and giving to you for your disposal, and you show us in practice every single day that you are as advertised, you will leave here a better player. And every single player that has entered Tallahassee walks away better because of it. Jared Verse from UAlbany, Keon Coleman from Michigan State, Johnny Wilson from Arizona State. Even though he wasn't a part of Mike Norvell's staff, Jordan Travis from Louisville. And then you throw in a Jaheim Bell from South Carolina. You throw in a Fentrell Cypress from Virginia. All of them benefited by playing in this offense. And so if you're a guy like Kaydn Proctor and you see the proof of concept working, why would you turn anywhere else? They're trying to be a player in the ACC. They're trying to prove to the world that they are just as good as advertised alongside the powerhouse of the SEC. Why would you go anywhere else besides a place like Tallahassee? Another place to look at, Ole Miss. They're spending money like crazy in the NIL funds. Maybe they wouldn't go after a guy like Proctor, but it would at least make sense. Same thing goes for Oregon. Oregon's looking to hang around in the Big Ten. They're not trying to play second fiddle to anybody. They have a roster that's built for the now, and they have a roster that's built for the future with the additions of a guy like Dylan Gabriel and the additions of a Dante Moore for 2025. The same notion would be thought when it comes to what you look at with Kaydn Proctor going there for 2 seasons. He'd play in the Big Ten. He'd play on the big stage. He'd go against quality competition. And there's a shot that as long as you're in the top 3 of the Big Ten rankings, you're going to the college football playoff. One more for you, which is a dark horse, but I do think that you at least have to throw them in the mix. Miami. Miami is known for having Mario Cristobal as a head coach. Mario Cristobal was a former offensive lineman and a former stellar offensive line coach. But even though the numbers don't back up the production, what does back it up is his ability to recruit offensive linemen. Just look at the handful of names that entered Tuscaloosa and then were called in the first round. From DJ Fluker to Chance Warmack to countless others that I'm already forgetting simply because of how abundantly rich Cristobal was able to work that in his favor. A place like Coral Gables, willing to spend a little bit of money in the NIL funds, willing to go spring to finalize their roster. Proctor would make a lot of sense. You're trying to pair him up with 2 young up-and-coming offensive linemen. Those would be 3 proven commodities: right guard, right tackle, left tackle. And now you give yourself a plethora of opportunities for Cam Ward to be able to run the offense the way you see fit. I don't think Miami ends up getting him, but I do think that they will be a player. Now, as for Alabama, this is the harsh part. Kalen DeBoer, welcome to the SEC. Welcome to where it's not going to be all fun and games every single day. And simply because the script day carries a lot of weight does not mean that you're going to retain everybody. And it certainly does not mean that you are going to get everybody. You have to be able to recruit. This is where having guys like a Ryan Grubb in the building to implement the offense is important. This is why having a guy like Kane Womack on the other side, who has experience in the SEC and understands the lay of the land of the Southern region, growing up, playing at Southern Miss, also being a coach on Ole Miss's staff and throughout the Southern region, that's important for you to be able to build the baseline. Now it's about getting relationships. Now it's about winning in certain parts of the country. And the other part that's really important, you look at where Kaydn Proctor came from. That was what made Nick special when it came to the recruiting asset of things. He didn't care about winning just the state of Alabama. He wanted to win every state. He wanted to be able to tell kids that they could come from California, from North Dakota, from Tennessee, from New York, from New Hampshire, from Kansas. They could all make their way down to Tuscaloosa and eventually become champions and proven players that would make it to the NFL. He did not care. That's the way that Kalen DeBoer is going to have to work. He's going to have to build relationships outside of the Yellowhammer State. Still pay attention to that state because there's a ton of talent there. There's a ton of talent state over in Georgia. There's a ton of talent state over in Mississippi. But you got to expand your horizons. And for a guy that's had experience coaching from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, to Fresno State, California, to Bloomington, Indiana, I don't think that that's going to be a problem. What I will say is that it is a whole different animal when you're going up against guys like Tennessee, like Georgia, like Florida, like Texas A&M, LSU, and their resources and abundance of riches than it is going up against teams like Boise State, or you could throw in San Jose State or San Diego State, or in the Pac-12 going up against UCLA or going up against an Oregon State. It's a little bit of a different animal. Got to be able to build those relationships. Got to be able to go ahead and add in players that you think are going to finalize your roster. There's 2 offensive linemen from Seattle that are entering the portal. Maybe bring them down there. But this is the part that Kalen DeBoer was going to have to get used to. When you go to a school, you're going to lose talent in the process. And losing a guy like Kaydn Proctor, who was just coming into his own at left tackle, that is a gut punch that you should be able to recover from. But it may be easier said than done. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching that video. Don't hit the X button yet. Make sure you hit subscribe to keep up with all of our daily content found on Just Saying It and anything else that we post on this channel. Bye.